My name is Dr. Chris Jenkins, and I am the CEO of the Orianne Society and the host of the Snake Talk podcast, the podcast where you learn about nature's most feared, maligned, and persecuted animals. I invite you to listen to this conversation, and maybe you'll find that what you perceive as fear is actually rooted in a deep fascination. Welcome to the Snake Talk podcast. I am sitting here with my friend and colleague Jelka. She is a snake biologist from over in Serbia. And we've known each other now for a number of years. And first met her when we were creating the Viper Specialist Group within the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And I was the founding chairman of that, and she was the founding chair for the European chapter. So I've known Jelka off and on for a number of years, and I just thought it would be interesting to get her perspective on snakes and snake biology and her career trajectory, given that, again, she lives over in Serbia, a much different place in many ways than many of our listeners are from. So welcome to the podcast, Jelka. The first thing I want you to do is actually pronounce your full name for us, because I certainly cannot do it.
So, hello, Chris. Thank you very much for inviting me and this very famous snake talk podcast. So, my name is Jelka Crnobrnja-Isailović. So, you can see I have two surnames. And my maiden surname have been always difficult to pronounce. So, so it's better people actually know me just as Jelka, because using surnames, it's too much difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I like to start from the very beginning, and I want to hear kind of the origin story of how you ended up getting into snakes and herpetology and ecology and all that. So is that something that you were, kind of hit you when you were really young, like a child, or is that something that came about kind of later in life?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting story. And I was also interested what could be the origins of my interest for snake, especially for venomous snakes of Europe. I mean, these vipers. And because as far as I know, I remember myself, I was really very interested in snakes, particularly in vipers. First, I found that these creatures are very nice. I liked, for example, jewelry when I was a kid. And I was always thinking that, snakes are so nice, like bracelets and so on. And the other thing which could provoke that interest in these particular creatures could be that, my parents were very, they had a strong fear of vipers. And not only my parents, but my entire family. So because, my origins are from the karstic mountains of the Balkan Peninsula in southeastern Europe. And it is a nice place for vipers. And people there encountered vipers very, very often. And you could hear so many fantastic, I would say, fairy tales about vipers. And listening all these stories as a child, I was a little bit suspicious. I don't know why, but these creatures were always represented as evil. But I somehow realized as very young that animals couldn't be evil. They could be maybe feared of humans, and that's the reason they could attack. But, they couldn't be evil. I don't know how I realized that, but okay, that's it. And I was a very curious child, and probably because there was no much information about snakes in my surroundings. At that time, there was not so many books and so on. So, I was looking where to find these informations, and I was interested to see these creatures. And that's how at the end I entered faculty of biology, or I decided to study general biology, which was a really a very crazy decision.
Yeah, so you grew up in the mountains in Southeast Asia. You grew up in a time, I introduced you to something in Serbia, but you grew up...
Sorry, I didn't grow... I grew up in the city.
You grew up in the Yugoslavia.
Yeah, of course. But in the city, not in the mountains. I was just... My ancestors, they lived in the mountains. And I visited those mountains during the summer holidays.
So it kind of makes... Oh, okay, great. So that makes sense why your parents maybe and your family maybe had that fear. But so you grew up in the city, in what was at the time Yugoslavia, and did you, so you said as a child that you realized that that these animals were important, and and just kind of started to grow a fondness for them, if you will. So when you were, going through, say, high school, when did you realize that it was even possible to maybe have a career working with these animals? Is that something you realized as you went into university, or is it something that, you kind of were studying other things and then you realized you could become a herpetologist?
First, I didn't know that the scientists, researchers, which are studying snakes and the other reptiles, are named herpetologists. At that time, also those which were studying amphibians were named herpetologists. Nowadays, these are herpetologists and batrachologists. That's how some, scientists divide those who are studying amphibians for those who are studying reptiles. But okay, I actually didn't have any specific idea, but starting to read very early, I think about the age of 4, and having a library, a membership card of the library, a local library. So I was reading as a crazy because, I like to read books. And I especially liked the books like those adventurous books. And reading about researchers which were traveling through the jungles and the other exotic places. Especially, when I say exotic places, not exotic cities, but exotic landscapes. So I realized that it is really beautiful to be researcher, explorer, whatever. And how to become researcher, explorer, and study animals? Well, you should study biology. Actually, at that time, I didn't know that maybe if you are studying veterinary medicine, you can, for example, get a job in a national park and also be settled in the middle of the wilderness and be more respected than a common biologist. But okay, that's another story. So thinking that only as a biologist, I could assure that my life will be walking through a lot of different landscapes and seeing a lot of interesting animals, especially snakes. Well, that directed me toward biology as a subject of study. But it was a pure luck to get a job as a researcher. So at that time.
So where did you end up going? Where did you do your undergraduate degree? In Yugoslavia?
Yeah, actually, I entered study of biology, general biology in 1981, and I got my bachelor diploma in 1986 and my master diploma in 1988. So it was still the time of Yugoslavia. But I must say that when I was very, very young, first I wanted to be a librarian. Then I wanted to be a teacher. Then I wanted to be a newspaper reporter. Fortunately, it didn't last for a long time. And but with every year I was more and more directed toward biology, because my father told me, well, the only good job is to job which is connected with natural sciences. Of course, he was thinking about the medicine, pharmacy, or something else. But I chose general biology, and my parents couldn't tell anything against, because I had high grades, and they respected that. So it was their fail. Yeah,
that's great. So getting a biology degree, they might have even thought there was hope that you could become a pharmacist or something like that. So that's great. But so you're getting this biology degree, and as you said, you went on to get your master's, and you had this interest in snakes. Well, so when you were doing your master's research, is it kind of like here in the States, where when you do a graduate degree, you do a thesis and you have a research project in the field and all of that? Is that something that was part of your master's degree there?
Unfortunately, I officially started to work on snakes very late, when I finished my PhD, and when I became, let's say, independent researcher. It's a very sad story, because I tried to get some subject related to snakes, particularly these vipers. But my mentors, they were not interested in that. They told me, "Oh, everything is known about the snakes." They had the other plants, and they developed some other aspects. So actually, I started to work on newts, and I didn't know that newts exist. It's also a sad story, because when my first contact with the field work and with the research in biology was in high school, when my professor told me that at the biological faculty there is a students' organization like NGO, and they're organizing field trips and so on. And I could try to become a member of that society. And I really entered that society at the moment when their herpetological group fall apart, because, all the members of the group, they're finishing their studies, they start to work and so on. And when I came in that biological society, entered biological society, they realized, that little one is very interested, so we will give her a task to form this group again. So at first moment, there were only a few members, and I should actually do all things by my own. I mean, there were some scientists, and they were like mentors, but they never went with us to a field trip. And from one side, it was not good, because you couldn't, we didn't have someone, I didn't have someone to learn from in the field, directly in the field. On the other side, it was good, because I was learning by myself. And it could be good, because, I think that you absorb more effectively the knowledge about the biology of the species you are trying to find, trying to study, when you are just with yourself alone.
Yeah. So you said you were working on newts during your master's degree. Tell us a little bit about some of the research you're doing on newts before we get into your snake work.
The subject of my master thesis was the great crested newt. At that time, it was one species, Triturus cristatus, with 4 subspecies, but very soon it became a complex of species. Nowadays it is 6 or even 7 of these Triturus species, and their interrelations and taxonomy and evolutionary history is very interesting. And for example, Balkan Peninsula, especially that part I still live in, Serbia, it's the place where these, let's say, different species came in contact and they formed some sort of hybrid zones. So it's very, very complex story. And at the end, I'm happy that I had opportunity during one part of my career to work on crested newts. So the subject of my master thesis was the genetic structuring of the crested newt populations in Yugoslavia. It was 9 populations from all over Yugoslavia. So the samples collected, and I was doing electrophoresis, starch gel electrophoresis. It's the simplest one ever. And it was it was fun. I liked that. This population. Actually, I did my master in population genetics, and it was nice. And I expected to do after that some population ecology, but it was not possible because for my PhD thesis, they just, my mentors decided that now we will work on lizards. And that's another story, but it is also interesting.
So you finished your master's and then you went right from your master's into your PhD, and you were working on lizards for the PhD. Is that right?
Yeah. It's also, actually,
tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about the lizard research.
So that research started when Yugoslavia still existed, but soon after it started to disintegrate. So in Montenegro, there is in southern part of Montenegro, there is a big lake, big shallow lake, which is named Lake Skadar. And it is interesting that, it is a sort of depression which started to fill with water long ago. And these lower parts of the mountains which are surrounding the present Lake Skadar, so they became islands when the water started to invade there. Actually, there were some tectonic movements, and this lower parts of the mountains, they start to fall down, and it was like a kind of depression was formed, and because there are some rivers, the lake the lake appeared, and you can see there around 40 karstic islands of different size and shape. And these small karstic islands, some are very small, some are, large, let's say. They were, long ago, they were connected with each other. And there are lacertid lizards, up to 6 species, 2 big lacertas and 4 small. And their spatial distribution on these islands was very interesting. In the time I started to work, and a couple of other colleagues started to work on them. And it was interesting that particularly two lizard species, Podarcis muralis, which is a common wall lizard, and Dalmatolacertox cephala, which is named a blue lizard. So they're ecologically quite similar, but there are also some differences. So they were found in syntopy only on the last of these 40 islands. And the question was, well, why their spatial distribution on these islands is so, so specific. So on the island where is the muralis, no Oxycephala, and vice versa, only on the last of these 40 islands you can find both of them. And if you look at the coast, in the coastal area, well, you can see all these little lizards. I mean, there are two more species which were very rare on islands, but you can find these 4 species of small lacertid lizards on the coast, very close to each other. So the entire story is very interesting ecologically, but the pity is that we didn't work on ecology. We were working again on morphological differentiation, genetic differentiation, which was not very high, not at all.
So were the lizards crossing the water and breeding, or is it just kind of historic gene flow?
I think that it was a historic gene flow, of course, and these islands were not geologically very, very old. So to expect this insular spatial organization of populations and this very low gene flow. But also you could imagine that maybe from time to time, because there is a lot of villages in the coastal area, and the local citizens, inhabitants, they have been using these islands to keep their sheep and goats, especially goats, there. So there was a lot of transport, transport by boats from here to there and so on. So I couldn't imagine that the lizards were jumping very often into the boats, and traveling from one island to another. But who knows? Another interesting thing is that the water table of the Lake Skadar could vary very much from year to year. The lake itself is very shallow, from 3 to 7, 8 meters. And you can imagine that, and it could vary from year to year from 3 to 4 meters. So you can imagine that maybe in some years, when it was a very low water table, some islands which were closer to the coast were, let's say, more reachable.
Reptiles face many challenges, from habitat loss to climate change. As an example, turtles are the most threatened group of animals on the planet, with over 60% of species classified as endangered. The Orian Society is working hard to secure a thriving future for these incredible animals. To engage in the critical work we're doing, explore our website at www.orian.org. There you'll find in-depth insights into the science, conservation action, and communication initiatives we're undertaking. Visit us today.
So what year did you end up getting your PhD? Like, what time frame was this? Was this in when Montenegro existed as a country, or was it?
Well, Yugoslavia was slowly disintegrated. In 1990, first Yugoslavia, I think stopped to exist because Slovenia separated first, then Croatia. Then in 92nd, the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina started, unfortunately. And at the time I was finishing my PhD, there was, let's say, shortened Yugoslavia, consisted of Serbia and Montenegro. And in 2005, I think, finally Serbia and Montenegro separated, and they became completely separate countries.
Well, before I want to get into snakes.
So actually, I started
Well, I want to get into snakes specifically, but
let's return to snakes.
Well, I want to finish on this. I just want to what was it like finishing your PhD and working towards starting your career right at such a volatile time in the history of that region, and war and new countries being created. And just talk a little bit about that if you don't mind. What was that like? Again, becoming a doctor and wanting to be a snake biologist, but in the background, the political and social unrest and countries falling apart around you. What was that like?
Oh, for me, it was complete horror because, I was born in Yugoslavia and I was traveling through Yugoslavia when I was a kid and in high school and so on. And in what moment you cannot travel? You're traveling, for example, 3 hours to the west or 4 hours to the south, or 5 hours to the south. And there is a border. And in the past, there was no borders. So for me, it was really, stressful. So you cannot enter, for example, you cannot enter Bosnia and Herzegovina from Montenegro in the 90s because, you should have a passport. And I don't know, it was a complete mess. And another thing was that in 1991, I became a mother and I was completely frustrated, having a child in one chaos, which I couldn't predict. So it was not pleasant at all.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean,
was it being a biologist, maybe your kind of career went on hold, but was it dangerous to do field work, or was it, did you really notice it in your day-to-day beyond these boundaries, or were you able to kind of continue on your career trajectory?
Except in the times of these specific conflicts in some parts of the ex-Yugoslavia territory, because they were just these war zones. They were appearing and then disappearing and so on different parts of the area, of the region. But the colleagues continued to cooperate. The people who knew each other from the times of Yugoslavia. So we continued to cooperate on the ways we could. And, nothing changed that because we were, normal people. And, but I was more meeting my colleagues from other Yugoslavian countries on international meetings than in the field, because since Yugoslavia stopped to exist, our common field work was stopped for a while. Of course, later, the beginning of 21st century, so the things became easier, and especially younger colleagues, they start to communicate through these NGOs to make field excursions together, to make projects and these things, common projects. So, but in 90s, it was a little bit tricky.
So you've lots of changes in your life in the early 90s, right? You have your child, the country you live in dissolves and breaks up, and you're finishing your PhD. So just all of these big changes. So you go through that period of time, and then I'm assuming, after the breakup and all of these issues that you're living through, that economies aren't that strong and so on and so forth. So you finish your PhD, you have this interest in snakes, you've gone through all these major changes. What was kind of the next step? How did you go on and become, working at a university and being a researcher in snake biology and all of that? So how did you move on from those changes to get where you are today?
I was very lucky that after finishing my undergraduate studies, I immediately got a job in a scientific institution, in the Institute for Biological Research, Siniša Stanković in Belgrade, because it was just a time for old people to retire, and how to say that the change of generations. So not only me, but let's say maybe 10, 12 colleagues from my cohort, biology students, graduate biology students, we all got a job as research trainees. And it was a pure luck because, it could happen that you cannot get a job at all. There is very few positions for scientific positions. The same story was at the faculty. So to become a research assistant, there is not so many positions open at that time. And so I was having that research position, and then when I finished my PhD at the beginning of year 2001 and so on. So I got an offer to do a part-time teaching job at the Faculty of Biology to teach evolutionary biology, because in the institute I was a researcher in the Department of Evolutionary Biology. So I never planned to be a teacher. I didn't like that because I knew, how cruel, children and later students could be toward the teachers or professors. But okay, it was a challenge and I accepted that. And then by giving these first lectures, I realized that, it is a tough work, but it's excellent because you continuously have someone who will ask questions, and on that way force you to continuously improve your knowledge. Of course, when you are just doing a research job, you're also improving your knowledge. But talking in front of 20, 40, whatever students, it requires much more work. And I like that situation when I must prepare for the new questions. Even I didn't have a problem to say, okay, I don't know the answer on your question, to tell the student, but okay, I will check, and next time I will have an answer. And that's how I started relatively late with the teaching job. I had some offers earlier to become assistant at the faculty, but I didn't accept at that time because I was too much focused on my child, and I was thinking that I couldn't be able to do on my PhD and do a teaching job and take care about my child and so on. But later on, when I realized that, I can do that, and okay, my child was, older, then I realized that, teaching position is, let's say, much more stable than research position. And that's how I decided to try to apply for a steady job in education. And I got it in another city. It was the city of Niš. It's also a university town, but on the south of Belgrade. And it was a new department of biology and ecology there. They needed the staff, and that's how I started to work. Let's say as a professor. But they keep my position at my research position, so that's why I have these both titles, scientific title and research title and professor title, whatever.
Well, that's a fascinating story of how you get to where you are today. But let's talk about snakes in general. And so you're in Serbia now, and tell us just a little bit about snakes in Serbia. Like, a lot of people probably don't have much of an idea in terms of like what species might be there. Is there high diversity, low diversity? Are there a lot of different ecosystems? But just what would be kind of your high level overview of snakes of Serbia?
The diversity of snakes of Serbia is, looking at Europe in general, is decent. It's not so nice as in those countries which have entrance to the sea, to the Mediterranean, because in Europe we have a nice number of Mediterranean snakes, purely Mediterranean snakes. And only a few of them you can find in Serbia, because we have some, let's say, enclaves, refugia, some Mediterranean refugia on the very south of the country. But we have 2 species of water snakes. We have this, let's say, maybe 5-6 species of rat snakes. I mean, colubrids in general. Natricines are, let's say, also colubrids, but some recently, I think, natricines form a separate family, Natricidae. Somewhere they are Natricinae, somewhere they are Natricidae. And we have we have 3 species of vipers, which is nice.
And which viper species do you guys have?
It is so we have Vipera ammodytes, or the nose horn viper. We have Vipera berus. It is the most widespread viper species in Europe, and not only in Europe. It's the name is Adder. And we have this nice, cute Vipera ursini, or Orsini viper, which is endemic to Europe, and very narrow regarding a habitat choice. Not so many in Serbia. It's just a few places where you can find it. Up to now, what we know.
So you get into these, more, you're in the research position and the teaching position, and always had this interest in snakes, and you've worked on lizards and newts, and gone through the wars and countries dissolving and becoming a mom and all of that.
I even started to work on and I started to work even on tortoises, which I never planned to work on. But it was because of the students. I should find some subject species which will be completely harmless and easy for every student to spot and to catch. And the only tortoises could fulfill all these requirements.
That's
So
great.
that's it.
Well, so when, not when, but like, let's talk a little bit as your career got more focused into snakes. Talk a little bit about that transition, how you started working on snakes, and then I want to just talk about some of the different kind of projects and species that you've worked on over the years.
Yeah. Okay. Everything started when in the beginning of year 2000, when country, let's say, become liberated from the previous regime, and we enter some democratic changes. So there is also a change. There were changes in science. So the new concept of projects, and what was good, it was that we young scientists were also. It was also possible for us to apply for projects. Of course, if we have enough papers, if we have a good bibliography. And that's how it happened that me and my colleagues, we were of the same age. Well, we decided to make our own project, and we succeeded. And but the bad thing was that I was the leader of the project because. It just happened that I had the most diverse bibliography, which was required. And we entered this 5-year big project entitled Evolution in Heterogeneous Environments. There was a nice amount of money, so we could buy a nice equipment for everyone and so on. And with the few younger colleagues, I started this research on Ursini viper in Montenegro. It was one specific place in, let's say, it's northern Montenegro. It's Bjelasica mountain, where, I found, I'm not sure, maybe people knew before I found Ursini viper there, that there is Ursini viper, but there were no any papers about that. So I made this in 1997 or 1996. I found the first Ursini viper on Bjelasica mountain, and later I made a short note about that in Herpetozoa. And in 2002, with my younger colleague, we visited Bjelasica, one part of this high mountain area, and we realized that there is a lot of Ursini viper. For one day, we found I think six individuals, and also in the same place there was a Viperoberus. So Viperoberus is very shy, actually. That's my impression, and it's very difficult to find it, even on the places it is there. And in that specific locality, you could also find Viperoberus every day. So it was a nice place for starting monitoring. So we applied, we needed some extra funds, so we applied for a grant to European Herpetological Society, because they have these small grants, annual small grants for let's say, not only young researcher, but more or less they support younger researchers, let's say early career researchers. So we got nice grants of 2,000 euros or Deutschmarks, I don't know, probably euros. So we bought some extra equipment and we started monitoring. And it lasted until 2009. And then, our projects, colleagues went to different projects. They found another new interests. So that's how that monitoring stopped. And of course, Montenegro in the meantime became a separate country, and it was more and more difficult to work. I mean, you should ask for a lot of permits and so on. And when we started, in the time Serbia and Montenegro were one country, we were doing in these first years very nice things. We were collecting a certain number of females, gravid females in late pregnancy, and we were bringing them to Belgrade, to the institute, to the lab, and we were keeping them and feeding them until they give birth. And then we were, measuring and marking babies and so on, and returning both babies and mothers to that population. And it was really nice, and so we were very happy when we found. I remember. Oh, sorry, it's my telephone. When we found 4 years after we marked one newborn baby, we found that individual as a full-grown male. Babies had very specific markations, so it was absolutely sure that it is that individual. And it was very, very big happiness.
And so tell us a little bit about Ursini, and what's the common name there? What, a meadow viper, is that right? But just tell us
Yeah, it's meadow viper because...
I was just going to say, tell us a little bit generally about them. You talked about these populations kind of being up in the high mountains. So, do they live in meadows? Are they up in high meadows? Just kind of talk a little bit about their biology. I'd just be interested in learning a little.
So the origin of Ursini, as the story says, the data, historical data, that actually they originated somewhere in Central Asia in steppes. So like steppes, like prairies, these are grasslands. And they migrated, and that's how in certain time in history, geological history, they entered Europe. And they also, established populations in these open habitats, grassland habitats. While some of those grassland habitats were in the plains, and nowadays we still have there are still these lowland populations of Ursini viper, for example, in Hungary, in Romania, in lowlands of Romania, and adjacent countries. So it is Vipera, it is known in Hungary as subspecies Vipera ursini rakoshiensis, and in Romania it is named Vipera ursini moldavica. So these are lowland populations, but there are also highland populations which were established in open habitats. In those grasslands above the tree line, which are natural alpine meadows, they were, these habitats are natural. But in a lot of mountains, there are grasslands which are actually of anthropogenic, historically anthropogenic origin, because, people originally, there were a forest, but people were entering these areas, they were cutting the parts of the forest, they were raising cattle and so on. And for example, in Macedonia, in North Macedonia and the western part of North Macedonia, so there is one mountain which is named Bistra. When you go there, you will see a huge plains. So, and there are also Ursini vipers, these highland populations. And of course, you will think that, these are natural open areas, natural grasslands. But no, if you will, if you would remove herds of sheep and cattle, which are there, after some decades, and so on, so that mountain will be completely overgrown by forest. So these are secondary, let's say, mountain meadows, which Viper orsini inhabit. So for Viper orsini, it's very important that these open areas in the mountains remain open areas in the mountains. And for that, you need
I was just going to say, how do you
herds.
keep them open? Is it mainly livestock grazing? Is it fire? How do you keep the habitat?
Yeah. Viper orsini, except in these high mountains of Balkan Peninsula, I'm talking now about high mountain populations, also exists in France, in southern part of the France, in some parts of the mountains, and also in Italy. And there are a lot of, because unfortunately with the technological development, more people were more and more leaving the mountains and this farmer living style, going to the cities, entering the other jobs. So a lot of these areas which were secondary mountain meadows start to regrow the forest. And how to keep these areas, how to keep the habitat of Orsini under such circumstances. They have been doing that by fire, by this control fire. There were some projects, and in France, to keep these habitats of Orsini viper. Also promoting the livestock grazing, this traditional lifestyle, is another, by my opinion, more secure way to keep these habitats, because fire is a little bit that's my opinion. It's a little bit destructive, and you can say it is controlled fire, but you never know. Controlled fire could become uncontrolled fire, and except in areas where the fires were naturally occurring from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use a lot of fire, prescribed fire or controlled fire for conservation work here as well. It's fascinating that you guys are doing that for Orsini.
Yeah, I know because when I started to teach conservation biology, I was reading textbooks from USA, and I realized that your conservation practitioners, it's just a sort of routine. So I suppose that you have no problem, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's huge. Oriane Society, we have our own fire teams, and we're out doing habitat restoration with fire.
If you enjoy listening to the Snake Talk podcast, stay in the loop with the Oriane Society's latest conservation updates from the field. Read about new published research, as well as fascinating insights on the species we work with by following us on social media. Follow, like, share. Let's spread the word. Together, we can make a difference. Find the Oriane Society on Instagram, Facebook, X, or LinkedIn and be part of the conversation.
So you're working on these Orsini populations, but it sounds like Montenegro becomes a different country and it becomes a more difficult place to work. So these long-term projects that you started, kind of become more difficult and kind of change. And so what have you done kind of since that time frame? Do you have a particular snake or project in Serbia that you're focused on and do a lot of research with?
Teach in Niš. I start to look for some place where a student could learn about the monitoring. And at that time, my assistant, she needed some topic for her PhD. And we decided that because she was not fond of snakes, that the tortoise, the Hermann's tortoise, which is a relatively common species in Serbia, could be a nice model organism. Of course, also for students. So we found one place in the surroundings of the city of Niš, and we started in 2010, our first year of monitoring. Well, twice per year, 7 days, every time, 7 consecutive days. But apart from Hermann's tortoise, that place is also inhabited by nose-horned vipers. And because, looking for tortoises, well, you inevitably will also meet a viper. So I was always, every time we find a viper, I was collecting the data and so on. And then some students appear which were interested also to collect the vipers, the nose-horned viper. And I can say that since 2010, well, it is a regular collecting of data on the nose-horned viper in that area. It's maybe 20 kilometers squared or something like that, entire area. But the sad thing is we are marking these vipers, but we never found the same nose-horned viper twice. So that's a sad story.
Yeah, it probably means you have a really much larger population than you might know. So
yeah.
So, interesting. And so, are these horned-nosed vipers? Are they a rare species or common in Serbia or globally? What's kind of their status?
Well, they are least concerned on national level, least concerned on regional level. European level, least concerned globally because. It is still, nose-horned viper is still considered as one species, even there are some interesting data. Recent papers show, phylogeographic studies show that, there are very deep, divergences, genetic divergences between different groups of the nose-horned vipers. But I would not like to comment on that. We will see, what the future results will show us. Just to say at the moment that on the Balkan Peninsula, which is the, let's say, main part of the species area of the nose-horned viper, well, it is a very common species. When I say very common species, it means very common in this range of, let's say, elevations, because it is a thermophilous, more or less thermophilous species. It inhabits these primarily oak forests, so thermophilous forests or degraded areas, which were long ago the thermophilous forests and so on. Then also gorges, karstic areas, and so on. But when you're looking at the distribution, you can say, it is a common species. And it is a species which is visible, contrary to the Vipera berus, which is really very, very shy. But the question, is Vipera moditis a common species? How big are their populations and so on? Well, what is the real conservation status of that species? We still cannot say exactly, because Vipers in general are not easy to study. For example, in some parts of the year, in spring where there is a mating season, so you can find them very active and so on. When you arrive to the same place later on, for example, the end of June, well, you can walk entire day and you cannot find one individual. So they have this, I'd say, specific lifestyle. So the spring is the best time to look for vipers in this part of the area inhabited by the nose-horned viper.
Yeah. So basically, you're monitoring the horn-nosed viper and the tortoises kind of as part, working with your assistant and working with students and all of that in basically in the region where where you're currently teaching. And so is that kind of the future plans, or do you plan to continue working with the horn-nosed viper and kind of doing long-term monitoring, or do you have other kind of snake-focused research plans for the future?
Well, I would like to know a little bit more. I mean, not to know a little bit more, but to try to collect more data about Viperoberus in Serbia, because this part of that species distribution area is actually southern edge of the distribution. So Viperoberus is, I would say, boreal type of species. So it is a species more adapted to cold and humid environments. So this is a species which, which lives in the very north of Europe. You can find it in Norway. You can find it in Sweden. So actually, our colleague Thomas Madsen, he is working in Australia for a long, long time. But when he was young, he started to monitor one or two populations of Viperoberus in Sweden, in very remote area. And even he moved to Australia, he was continuing to return to Sweden and to monitor with the help of his colleagues. And now you can find his papers recently published, the results of this, I think, 30 or 40 years monitoring of that population or these populations of Viperoberus. It's fantastic.
Well,
so I would like to find one population in Serbia which will be, more visible and easy to monitor.
Okay, well, it sounds like a fun project. Those southeastern European vipers have always fascinated me for a long time. So I'm glad that you're there working on them. We've been talking about an hour, so I think we'll begin to
I see.
bring this one in for a landing. But before I let you go, I like to have all of my guests tell me their best snake story. So, Jelka, you have a snake story for us?
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's not European snake story. I mean, I have also European snake story, but this one I would like to share with you. Is much more intense for me, and it is my first encounter with a rattlesnake. And that happened in Illinois, on the border between Illinois and, what's the...
we don't need to give the location anyways, because they're very...
Never mind. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. It is a place which is the owner is one university, a small university, and actually, I went there as a volunteer to help a colleague who was collecting data about egress of Crotalus horridus, or timber rattlesnake, and I didn't know how it looks like. First, the area, I was thinking that I am, well experienced field biologist. But, such a steep slopes I never seen in my life. And, if you have a steep slope, and if you fall down, you will fall to a river or to a magistral road. And that's first. And the second, well, I didn't know that, this sound the rattlesnakes produce. I didn't expect that it is too loud, because before that I was encountering Massasaugas and, and I was also seeing in the movies there's rattlesnakes, how they are producing sound and so on. And okay, I was walking, we were doing like a transect, and I was walking with my colleagues through the nice oak forests. So they were going a little bit faster than me. We finished the transect route, so I was just going slowly, making photos, And in one moment, I just heard a huge noise. It was really a very, very loud noise. And I was first thinking that it is ambulance. Oh, and then police. Because I have a fear of police since my early age. I don't know why. And then I realized, well, I'm in the middle of the forest. There is no road. So they couldn't be ambulance. They couldn't be police. What could it be? And wow. So it is like a rattling. And it is rattling. So it is a rattlesnake somewhere near. And then I saw the rattlesnake. And it was huge. It was, it was 1 meter and something, because I make a footage. So I can, looking at that short video, I can, count a little bit how huge it was. And when I saw that rattlesnake looking at me very seriously, it was a male, with this black, the head was a little bit black. Mm-hmm. And he was looking very seriously toward me. And I didn't have my gloves, but gloves couldn't help me. I didn't have anything, a hook, because we were not planning to collect them. Just if we found one, we will just record the coordinates and so on. So I realized that it would be good for me to move back. So of course I was scared, very scared. So I moved very slowly back, and I to some stones, and I was looking, and then I realized that I should inform my colleagues, and I start to yell, "There is a rattlesnake! There is a rattlesnake!" Because until then we couldn't find any rattlesnake, and they start to run, and they realized, oh, there is a rattlesnake. And at that time, I realized also that I should start to record a video. And I have that video with a very disappointed rattlesnake, which probably just entered from the hibernaculum. And, some humans start to disturb it. So it was very disappointed rattlesnake, which was, rattling. Then just decided, very, very, noble, to return and to go back to the cave or to the hole. So you can see on that video, the rattlesnake, which is rattling, and going back. So my colleagues, which are jumping after him, actually it was a male. And the rattlesnake is entering the hole, but it stopped in one moment, rattling again, just like would like to say, do not dare to follow me to my hole. And then start to continue to move to the hole, rattling once again, and then disappearing completely. And of course, my colleagues were, jumping to the opening of that hole. And Andrew Jasper, who was actually, it was his PhD, the topic of his, not PhD, sorry, master thesis. He told me, well, it is a real hibernaculum, because he was, I don't know, he did something. Maybe he had some stick, and he was measuring how deep it was. And it's a real hibernaculum. So it was really, really wonderful. And I was actually suspicious that maybe that my colleague arranged all that for me. That encounter with the rattlesnake, but probably not. Probably it was just a bad luck for the rattlesnake.
Well, that's great. Timber rattlesnakes are amazing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you.
They're amazing, really.
To see one in the wild. So, well, Jelka, thank you so much for sharing your story. A pretty amazing story, what you went through to get to where you are today. So thank you for sharing that, and appreciate you being on the podcast.
Can I say just one thing, because it's very important?
Please.
I would like to say that I'm very grateful to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign for hosting me, especially the Prairie Research Institute and Professor Christopher Phillips, and Mike Dreslick, and the entire department. So they were my hosts during my Fulbright grant stay there, and I was really very honored to be. For these 6 or 7 months I spent there, to be a part of their team. Great hospitality and great people. So
great. Yeah, well, thank you again, Jelka, for being on the podcast. It was good talking to you. And
thank you.
I just wanted to thank the audience and tell everybody to remember, snakes are animals too, and it's a privilege to see one in the wild.